All right, so you wanted to take a deep dive into how Donald Trump won in 2024.
Yeah, tons of people.
Yeah, and I mean, it really is fascinating.
Absolutely.
The sources that you sent over that really focus on social media and podcasts are, uh, I mean, it's not just about politics.
Right.
It's about how we're consuming information, especially younger voters, and how that whole landscape is changing so rapidly.
Yeah, it really is. The 2024 election was just a masterclass in how candidates need to adapt to reach these new voters.
Yeah,
You know, forget the old playbook of, going out and giving stump speeches and town halls.
right.
It's all about TikTok dances and podcast appearances now.
Exactly. And speaking of TikTok, remember back in 2020 when Trump wanted to ban the app?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Now in 2024, he was practically its biggest fan.
huge fan.
Even calling himself a big star on the platform,
Right.
literally telling users to vote for him to save TikTok. Talk about a 180.
Well, that wasn't just some random move.
Right.
He was strategically targeting a key demographic,
Right.
young voters.
They're the ones that live on TikTok and are less likely to be glued to traditional news.
Yeah.
So it was a direct pipeline to an audience that his opponent, Kamala Harris, really seemed to struggle with.
And he played it brilliantly, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
He really painted himself as the defender of TikTok, claiming that Harris would close it up if elected.
Yeah.
I mean, he even directly contrasted their stance during the campaign,
Yeah.
emphasizing that he wouldn't do anything with TikTok.
Totally. And it wasn't without controversy. I mean, some argue that, by aligning himself so closely with TikTok, that he
Right.
was implicitly endorsing its data privacy practices, which have been under scrutiny for a long time.
Right.
It's a reminder that every strategic move in today's media landscape comes with its own set of complexities and potential downsides.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if this is going to be the norm.
I think it will be.
Is TikTok the new battleground for political campaigns?
Yeah.
But let's move on to another platform that played a huge role in all of this, Twitter, or should we say X.
Right.
Elon Musk's takeover and rebranding really shook things up.
It did, and the impact on the election was undeniable. I mean, our sources highlight concerns about the spread of misinformation.
Oh, yeah.
Especially around immigration and election integrity, which became rampant on X.
It's pretty unsettling when you consider that a Wall Street Journal analysis found right-leaning posts dominating user feeds on X.
Right.
How much did the platform's algorithms play into that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
a reminder that these platforms are not neutral spaces.
Right.
The algorithms that curate our feeds have an enormous impact on what we see
Yeah.
and ultimately what we believe.
Right.
And let's not forget Musk's personal involvement.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he didn't just endorse Trump publicly. He pumped a hefty sum of money into the campaign.
We're talking $132 million in total to Trump and other Republican candidates, with $43.6 million and $75 million going directly to Trump's campaign through the America PAC.
That's a lot of money.
And who can forget that 2-hour live stream with Trump on X? Oh, yeah. Talk about reach.
That live stream was huge. I think it was a brilliant move by the Trump campaign to leverage Musk's platform and reach a massive audience that might not have been tuning into traditional news coverage.
Right.
But it also raises concerns about whether those with the deepest pockets can essentially buy their way into the hearts and minds of voters.
For sure. It definitely adds another layer to this already complex relationship between social media and elections.
Yeah.
But X wasn't the only non-traditional media outlet Trump utilized. Effectively, our sources point to podcasts as another major factor,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to mobilizing young male voters.
You're talking about the bro podcast culture, right?
Yeah.
It's a fascinating phenomenon.
Yeah.
Trump, or rather his team, realized that tapping into these existing, highly engaged audiences was more effective than trying to win over voters through traditional channels.
And this is where Barron Trump comes in.
Uh.
Who would have thought that an 18-year-old would be the secret weapon of a presidential campaign?
Right. He was apparently instrumental in choosing which podcasts his father should appear on.
That's right. And he had a knack for it, selecting shows like The Joe Rogan Experience, Logan Paul, Theo Von Lex Friedman, even the Nelk Boys, and Aiden Ross on Kick.
Wow.
This wasn't just random. It was a calculated move to infiltrate specific online communities.
Jason Miller, a senior advisor to Trump, even called Barron's picks absolute ratings gold that's broken the internet.
It really highlights the fragmented nature of our media landscape.
Yeah.
Trump was essentially bypassing traditional media and going straight to where these voters were already consuming content.
Right.
It's like a direct-to-consumer model for political campaigns.
It's fascinating to think about, isn't it? And this is just the beginning.
Yeah,
This trend of politicians leveraging podcasts and social media is only going to continue,
oh yeah,
especially as younger generations become a larger voting bloc.
absolutely.
So we've got TikTok X and podcasts all playing key roles in the 2024 election. What's next? Are we going to see holographic rallies in the metaverse?
Who knows? But one thing's for sure.
Yeah.
If you want to understand the future of politics, you need to understand the future of media.
You got that right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling to think about how fast things are changing. And it's not just about the technology.
No.
It's about how we consume information, how we form opinions, and ultimately how we make decisions.
Right.
In the voting booth.
Exactly. And, take podcasts, for instance.
Yeah.
This wasn't a completely new strategy for right-wing voices.
Yeah.
They've been cultivating their presence in the podcasting world for years,
Right.
building trust with their listeners,
Yeah.
and establishing themselves as alternative sources of news and information.
So Trump was basically tapping into an already existing network, an audience that was, in a way, primed for his message.
Precisely. And you also have to factor in, the historically low levels of trust in traditional media during this election cycle.
Right.
People were skeptical of mainstream outlets, and Trump really capitalized on that
Yeah.
by presenting himself as the antidote to the so-called fake news. These podcasts provided him with a direct line to a disillusioned electorate,
Yeah.
allowing him to circumvent the filters of mainstream media and deliver his message on his own terms.
It's like he created his own media ecosystem
Yeah.
operating outside the traditional channels of communication.
In a sense, he did, and that's
Yeah.
a powerful thing in today's fragmented media landscape.
Right.
It allows you to control the narrative, to set the agenda, and to connect with voters on a much more personal level.
And the 2024 election might be remembered as the moment when this shift became undeniable.
Yeah,
Like you said earlier, it could be called the podcast election.
absolutely.
A real turning point in how especially younger voters are engaging with political content.
It's a watershed moment, no doubt, but it raises a lot of questions.
So many questions.
Will this trend continue? What does this shift in media consumption mean for the future of news and political discourse?
Right.
And how can voters navigate this increasingly complex information landscape?
It's a lot to consider. And I have to admit, it's a bit overwhelming to think about.
It is, but awareness is the first step.
Okay.
We need to be conscious of how these platforms are shaping our perceptions, influencing our opinions,
Right.
and in some cases, even manipulating our emotions.
So what can we do? How do we become more media literate in this crazy world of information?
Well, for starters, we need to recognize that every platform, every source of information has its own biases.
Right.
There's no such thing as a truly neutral platform.
Okay.
So the key is to diversify your media diet.
Okay.
Don't rely on a single source for news and information.
Right.
Seek out different perspectives,
Right.
even those that challenge your own beliefs.
It's like cross-checking your sources, right?
Exactly.
Making sure you're getting a well-rounded view of the situation.
Exactly. And don't just accept what you see at face value. Be critical. Ask questions. Fact check.
Right.
There are so many resources available now to help us verify information and separate truth from fiction.
It's all about becoming more discerning consumers of information.
Right? We can't afford to be passive recipients of whatever information comes our way.
Yeah.
We need to be active participants, engaging critically with the information we consume
Right.
and shaping our own understanding of the world.
Because this isn't just about politics, is it? This is about how we understand everything happening around us.
It is.
From social issues to scientific discoveries to cultural trends.
You hit the nail on the head. Media literacy is essential for navigating the complexities of the 21st century.
Yeah.
It's about empowering ourselves to make informed decisions,
Right.
both in the voting booth and in our daily lives.
So we've been focusing on Trump's strategies in the 2024 election.
Right.
But the bigger story here is how the media landscape is changing and what that means for all of us.
Absolutely. This isn't just about one election, one candidate, or one platform.
Right.
It's about a fundamental shift in the way we consume information and engage with the world.
And understanding this shift is crucial for understanding the future of our democracy.
Because if we're not careful, we risk becoming increasingly fragmented, divided, and susceptible to manipulation.
Right.
We need to be aware of the forces at play, and we need to equip ourselves with the tools to navigate this new reality.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question to ponder.
Okay.
What does this shift in media consumption mean for the future of democracy itself?
It's a question that deserves our attention, our reflection, and our collective effort to find solutions because the stakes are high.
Yeah.
The future of our democracies depends on an informed, engaged, and discerning citizenry.
And it all starts with media literacy. Yeah, it really does feel like we're at a crossroads, you know?
Yeah.
On the one hand, we have access to more information than ever before, but
Mhm.
on the other hand, it's getting harder and harder to sift through the noise
It is.
and figure out what's actually true.
Yeah, it's like the information superhighway has turned into this chaotic roundabout
Right.
with no clear exits.
Yeah, exactly.
But as we've said earlier, it's not about giving up. It's about becoming more savvy navigators.
So let's talk practical tips. What can our listeners do to become more media literate
Well,
in this wild west of information?
I think it starts with questioning everything.
Okay.
Don't take anything you see or hear at face value, especially online.
Right.
Look at who's sharing the information,
Right.
what their motivations might be,
Okay.
whether other credible sources are reporting the same thing.
It's like being your own detective, right?
Exactly.
Always looking for clues
Yeah.
and evidence before forming an opinion.
And be wary of headlines and social media posts
Right.
that are designed to trigger strong emotional reactions.
Okay.
Those are often crafted to, grab your attention and make you share without thinking critically.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Pause, take a breath,
Yeah.
ask yourself, is this information coming from a reliable source?
It's so easy to get swept up in the outrage or the excitement of the moment, but taking that extra beat
It is.
to reflect can really make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And remember, a healthy dose of skepticism is your friend.
Okay.
If something sounds too good to be true or too outrageous to be believable,
Right.
it probably is. Do your own research. Check multiple sources.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
We've all fallen for that clickbait or shared something without really verifying it. It's about breaking those bad habits and being more intentional about the information we consume and share.
Yeah, and one of the biggest pitfalls I think to avoid is the echo chamber effect.
Right.
It's natural to gravitate towards people and sources that reinforce our existing beliefs, but that can create a really distorted view of the world.
Right.
So you have to make a conscious effort to expose yourself to different viewpoints, even those that you might disagree with.
It's like that saying, you can't learn anything from someone who already thinks exactly like you do. It's
Yeah.
about seeking out those diverse perspectives to get a more complete picture.
Yeah, and don't underestimate the power of conversation.
Oh, yeah. I think that's so important.
Talk to people who hold different opinions. Listen to their perspectives and try to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
You might not always agree,
Right.
but the process of engaging in, civil discourse can be incredibly enlightening.
For sure. It's about having those difficult conversations respectfully and being open to learning from each other.
Exactly. And remember, media literacy isn't a one-time lesson.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong journey
Yeah.
of learning, unlearning, and relearning as the media landscape continues to evolve.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into how Trump won in 2024, let's remember that it's not just about one election or one candidate. It's about equipping ourselves with those critical thinking skills and those media literacy tools to really navigate this increasingly complex world.
Because ultimately, the future of our democracies depends on an informed, engaged, and discerning citizenry.
Yeah.
It's up to each of us to be those citizens.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us.
Yeah, this has been great.
Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and keep those minds open.